Hi, welcome to the Different by Design webinar. This is session one of the educational series for neurodiverse founders, students, and professionals. Today's topic is designing your path, building careers and companies that work for your brain instead of against it. So today we'll talk about real strategies that work for building your career or your company. We'll have a roundtable discussion, including the audience, and we'll have an interview with William Foster, who's the CEO of Quantum Foam Studios. Make sure to join our mailing list to follow along for future events. This is going to be just the first session of probably a fairly long series. So um, first, I'd like to do an introduction for the series. What is Different by Design? This is an educational series. This is a space for neurodiverse professional students and founders to come together as a community to grow with professional and personal development material from leading experts that we'll have on as guests. And one of the core points of this is to learn how to turn your differences into strengths, because it's my personal philosophy that being different makes you stronger. You just have to figure out the way to apply your differences to achieve your goals. So a quick introduction for who's on the event today. I'm your host. My name's Salem Shepard. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the founder of Mountaineer Creative Studio, and I'm the host of Different by Design. I live in Dayton, Ohio. Today, as our guest, we have William Foster, CEO of Quantum Foam Studios and the co-creator of this series. Will, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Salem, thank you for putting this together. My name is Will Foster. I'm the CEO of Quantum Foam Studios. We're a venture studio here in Dayton, Ohio that supports local small businesses and nonprofits here locally and throughout the state. And excited to be here today. Also reside in Dayton.
Do you want to tell us real quick what a venture studio is?
Absolutely, yeah. So a venture studio model is where you take the services that you would normally need to move a business forward, like branding and bookkeeping and go-to-market strategy, and you bring all those in-house versus paying for them externally. So you build that team first, and then you use that team to spin up your ideas. And so the advantage to business owners, if they're able to build the model or partake in the model, would be speed, right? Getting where you're going quicker. So it's more upfront work to build that type of model and to bring all of that kind of in-house, but it can bring great speed and clarity, and that cash can be invested in other things along the way. So it's a model that we use as an advantage to get where we're going.
I'll say from my personal experience working with a lot of small business owners, when they are failing to achieve the long-term trajectory or growth goals that they want, it is often kind of an infrastructural problem where bringing in a team of experts like Quantum Foam has can really just be a huge infusion of
Mhm.
energy to really get you going on that trajectory that you want.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be a small business owner and just juggling everything, figuring everything out yourself, keeping the plate spinning every day. Sometimes you just need some outside help from like an outside team of experts who can come in and just get you going the way you want to go.
Mhm. And sometimes you don't need
Um,
the experts full time either in the beginning. Fractional support goes a long way for people. So if you have a new business owner with no budget and they need a full-time HR person, there's no rational world where they're going to be able to do that or acquire that. And so the venture studio model also helps support kind of fractional support and kind of phased in support, support that scales with a company as it grows as well. So.
yeah. Well, it's also, there's an interesting part of that, which is hiring an individual fractional person. Often you need a certain amount of knowledge or expertise in a field to really be able to judge whether somebody else is really going to be able to help you. Like, for example, if you're not a technical person, you might not be very equipped to judge how much of an expert somebody else is on technical matters. So this is kind of a good middle ground, in my opinion, where you work with a studio like Quantum Foam and they can connect you with fractional experts, but they're also
Mhm.
able to judge whether those people are really the experts you need.
Yes, absolutely. Vetting the resources and service is just as valuable as utilizing it.
So let's go ahead and move on here. I just wanted to talk about the values of the series real quick. So this is a space for community engagement. This is very much a like collaborative audience engagement. Your voice is welcome here. If you're attending, you're part of the event. This is a safe space for growth and collaboration. This is not a space for judgment. There's a lot of vulnerability in like thinking about the way your brain works and how it interacts with the world. And we're not trying to create an environment where anyone's going to feel like criticized. This is about growth and positivity. You should go at your own pace. Basically, take away whatever you want from these sessions. Sometimes a piece of advice or a strategy is not going to be a good fit for where you're at in your current journey. Maybe you kind of like squirrel it away for later and it becomes useful down the road. But just take away from this whatever is useful for you. And lastly, learn from each other. So we're all in this together. I've always found that the neurodiverse community really there's a huge amount of like resonance and synchronicity when it's like, oh wow, you always felt that way too. I just thought I was weird, you know? So this is a space where we can kind of celebrate our differences together. Today's session, we're going to have the interview. We're going to discuss how neurodivergence shapes our career paths and our businesses. How do you build a career that works with the structure of your brain? And then we're going to have an audience roundtable where the audience can chime in to tell us their stories or ask questions or what have you. Will, are you good to start the interview?
I'm good. Thank you, Sam.
Cool. So question one for William Foster, CEO of Quantum Foam Studios. What set you on this path to entrepreneurship?
hmm I've been in entrepreneurship most of my career, starting on personal training and then food and beverage, but specifically for Quantum Foam Studios and venture development, it came from seeing how fragmented the system was, the ecosystem. And so by the ecosystem, I mean the kind of the world that entrepreneurs navigate to get their business or their idea to market, right? And so the ecosystem involves, capital and expertise, as we mentioned, resources, tools, technology, institutions, and navigating those in the particular order, in the correct order can drive more success along the way. And so I was seeing a lot of isolation, a lot of silos, and Quantum Foam was an opportunity to tie all that together and create systems that work for the community. So that's what got things going for this first or for this current journey.
I like the description of it as silos. I mean, as an entrepreneur and also as
Mhm.
somebody who's in the same business community that you
Mhm.
are, it's really easy to be a small business owner and be struggling and just be totally unaware of all the resources that are out there to help you. Like whether it's like the small business administration or just other people you could connect with that are clients or collaborators or what have you, or programs like the Entrepreneur Center. Like I know so many people who are just like, oh, I'm not getting where I want to go with my business. And they just don't even know about all these resources that they could be applying to these programs, applying to grants, working with collaborators like yourself, but they just kind of like sit by themselves and struggle instead.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think people realize there's peers that are sitting alone and struggling, right? There's entrepreneurs out there that are doing what you just said, but they don't know that there's a lot of other entrepreneurs, maybe even the same community,
Yeah.
neighborhood, et cetera, going through the exact same thing. So, number one is to get connected with entrepreneurs. That way, you have somebody you can talk to about it along the way. And then just on the while we're on resources, the Miami Valley SBDC or just the Small Business Development Center in general, wherever you're located, is always a great resource to start. But yeah, to tie it back together, you were talking about silos, kind of like what we saw. I view a silo as an area where maybe there's resources being held that are duplicated elsewhere, or maybe there's programs or work being done that's also being duplicated over here by this organization, but they're not talking to each other, and that has a pretty profound impact on the ecosystem. It has such a profound impact that it should probably be talked about right now. But there's a reason we're solving it because not many are chasing that right now. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Business is all about connecting the right things together.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let's move on to the next question
hmm
here. How did your neurodivergent traits affect your career path and shape your approach to business?
Yeah, I jotted down a few notes for this one because I want to make a couple different points. But fast processing brain. But I was going to say, yeah, fast processing. My brain moves quick, right? And parallel processing. So pattern recognition and connecting the dots for me is something that's been very helpful in business. If you can see patterns, patterns show up everywhere. They show up in human behavior on your team, on your clients. The more you're around it, the more you understand it. It happens in the market, right? You can see patterns. How organizations or entities react to a service or a proposal. There's patterns within that. And so if you're able to just track all of that and use that data and apply it quickly, my brain's able to do that relatively quickly, which is an advantage. And it also shifted me more towards systems thinking and I would say delegation as a proactive approach versus reactive as well. And so it helped me being able to see ahead quite a bit due to patterns allows me to delegate sooner than I think some leaders do. Delegation is something a lot of leaders struggle with. And so the entrepreneurship side of my brain is like, and leadership side is like, that's just the appropriate thing to do. And then the neurodivergent side is that's just the natural thing to do, right? Is to delegate and to go that way. And then I would say that kind of day to day how I work, and this would be the last point I'll make, is that energy comes in waves, and I operate, typically like high output bursts with intentional recovery, and so I work very non-traditionally throughout the day, just to maintain what I need to maintain to do my work and to take care of myself. So work very non-traditionally, kind of throughout the day, a little non-traditionally in terms of how I approach systems, and then pattern recognition has been a big advantage.
Yes. I'd like to just make one comment on
hmm
something you said, um, which is having intentional recovery. I
hmm
am so like anti the whole hustle culture thing. Like you see these people talking about like, oh, I work 100 hours a week and blah blah blah, and I'm sleeping under my desk in my office, and it's like you should not be proud of that. That means you're doing a bad job. It's like
Yeah,
you
there's
should be like resting, and like working too hard is a problem.
yeah. I view that as a founder growing up. It doesn't matter what age they are. They're on their emotional maturity journey. And the good news is if you're watching this and you're there right now, you're not where you're supposed to be. And so you can use this as a wake up call. Because I used to be in that same spot as well. And being neurodivergent, it's easier to kind of get lost in the chaos and we can work pretty hard and we have high pain tolerances. Sometimes we don't even know we're under extreme discomfort until we're too deep into it, right? And so you have to be aware of all of these things. But yeah, from an entrepreneurship side, whether you're neurodivergent or not, that's just not how to approach it anymore. So there are things in life that require that level of commitment. There are periods of time at kind of upper leadership that level is required. But day to day or team members, it's just not an appropriate way to work.
I think
We have
balance
too
and
many tools
sustainability.
too. Sorry, we have too many tools now
Yeah,
too for people to work that much, right? If they're working that much, then they don't know how to leverage the tools and resources around them, AI tools and such to help with their workflow and et cetera.
absolutely. But yeah,
hmm
balance and sustainability to me is key. I try to focus in a like kind of
hmm
quality over quantity approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I rest more
Um,
than people think, but I have to. So.
yeah. Next question.
Mhm.
Did you ever have concerns and doubts about deciding to go down this path? And what's the biggest thing that allowed you to push through those doubts?
On the first part, I would say that there's like a lack of clear precedent for what it is that I'm trying to build. So there's less than 1,000 venture studios in the world, and then venture studios is kind of part of what we're building anyway. And so, doubts are natural. I don't doubt what we're doing, but you do question it along the way when you don't have as much to look at or reference, right? Especially if you're building something new for the first time. So, there's always doubts there in a way that you want to look out for that. In terms of what's the biggest thing that allowed you to push through these doubts? We saw and we're seeing very early traction. So traction comes through early revenue, early partners, or maybe early ideas that are gaining traction. And we're seeing that since we really kicked things off last June. So we're seeing the right signals from our collaborators, our investors, and our clients that show us that they like what we're providing, they like what we're delivering, and they continue to engage with us. So although non-traditional, we're getting feedback from individuals and organizations that they like our approach. Even how we approach meetings and proposals, they like our approach. And so, and what's cool about that is an approach that could be defined, right? There's probably a quote unquote secret sauce to it, right? We're an early firm though, but it's just kind of how we do things. And we really want to make sure that we can add value to our clients, and we want to add value first as we build a relationship with them. And we don't want to serve clients with anything they don't need either. Given that we're not one type of specialty, we're not just a accounting firm. We're not, we have expertise with our clients. We're able to evaluate their businesses as well. A lot of service providers just provide services. We can evaluate the whole business, and if asked, we could scale the business, right? So we not only bring the service side of it, we bring immense expertise that comes alongside that I think our clients appreciate, because that expertise does have a price to it, but we usually just give it out as a part of what we do in the beginning. So.
Yeah, I will say, for my part, doubt can be a really self-sabotaging thing. I mean, it's good
Mhm.
to like think critically and like, think of potential pitfalls. But I feel like I spent a long time kind of viewing like the business community and the business environment with a scarcity mindset, with a
Mhm.
like, you know, why would anyone want to do business with me? Like I don't think that now, but like that used to be like, or if I was thinking about like, oh, if I want to create X company, or I want to create X product, or I want to create some kind of network or whatever, there
Mhm.
was a lot of things that I just didn't pursue when maybe I was well positioned to do so, just because I was like, like investors probably wouldn't want to invest in me. And now, whereas now I'm like, I routinely find that I connect with people in the business environment, and they're quite eager to do business with me, actually.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome. A lot of us have
Yeah,
imposter syndrome. A lot of us do. I know C-suites that have it. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And so I think the comforting thing is it doesn't stop, but it gets better, right? I don't have the same level of imposter syndrome I had, 10 years ago. And at the end of the day, we can talk about imposter syndrome and those thoughts in our heads and what people think. And there's webinars and workshops and getaways and also books for this, but none of it's real, right? Those thoughts aren't real, the anxieties aren't real, and nobody's thinking about you. And we all know this. And so it's like we go in circles, right, around this stuff, but we have to talk about it and look out for each other, because a lot of the stuff in our head's not real. And at the end of the day, it usually works
yeah.
out. So why dwell? So.
I just tell myself sometimes, like, we've all met people who are like way more confident than they should be. So I'm like,
Mhm.
man, there's why should I lack confidence? There's a bunch of people out there who are like way less qualified than me to do X, Y, or Z, who are way more confident than me. So like I should be confident too.
That's why I'm where I'm at. I've used that this whole time for two reasons. A, there's people over there doing that, okay, I can do that too. And then, secondly, there's people in positions of responsibility and authority that shouldn't be there, in any sense. I mean, in any sense, any community, right? And so you want people in leadership positions who are going to drive the impact that position demands. So.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the next slide here. So there's going to be more questions after this. This is going to be an audience discussion break. So two options here, and everyone in the audience, feel free to chime in. You are part of this event. If you have a comment or a question about William's story or any of his answers, or if you want to answer this prompt, where are you in your journey? What's holding you back, or what made you take the leap? So are you a student? Are you a startup founder? Are you a few years into a startup? Um, Everybody's muted by default, but if you click on the reactions menu on the bottom and click the raise hand button, or just let us know in the chat if anybody wants to chime in. We'll take about 7 minutes for this portion.
Taking questions.
Yeah,
Cameron.
Cameron,
Sorry,
and you can go
Tim.
ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
I just had a thought on the piece we were just talking about in terms of imposter syndrome. I think it can also be difficult to, like, as a neurodivergent person, already in most situations, feeling like you're missing out on some, unspoken code of conduct. Like, how am I supposed to act in this conversation? What questions am I allowed to ask? Those sort of things. And I think that just gets exacerbated in your career because there's even more nuance to those types of situations and, you know, perceived higher consequences, I feel like. You could lose your job, your livelihood if you are behaving the way you should and um just not really. advice there, just a thought that I think it's interesting. It's a common phenomenon for all people, but I think it can get exacerbated for us just because of the nature of how our brains work.
Yeah, I think, I've always thought that there's kind of a narrow line you can walk with being neurodivergent, where it's like you can be like too worried about like the social anxiety and like, oh, what are the rules of this social situation? What are the rules of like being in this board meeting or at this networking event or whatever? But if you can kind of walk that line of like not letting it affect you, you can stand out because you think differently or because you are responding differently to the situation in a way that, makes people recognize and remember you. So it's kind of a fine line to walk, but it can actually be very powerful. I think that's why I say being different is a strength, because if you show up and are different, you're more likely to be remembered.
Completely.
Cameron, I think you worded it very well. I don't have anything to add to that. What you worded, you have that first layer of it's just hard in life, right, in general, and then you have that professional layer, which still get a little bit of feedback too. So, sorry.
We've got a question in the chat here from Jim. This is like a pretty juicy question, actually. So, what are suggestions for neurodivergent and others to best interact? Approaches, cues, are interactions different in business settings and social settings different? So that's a couple of questions there.
By others, do we mean neurotypical?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay. Well, I guess I can answer this. Let's see here. What are suggestions for neurodivergence and others to interact? Approaches, cues?
I have some thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead. Sam, if you don't mind, go ahead and answer. And then if you don't mind muting, and I'll answer after this.
Okay, sure. So I believe that there's no like perfect strategy. Like you can never have like some perfect all-inclusive like Bible or rule book that's like covers every single situation. I think the best thing to do when people have potentially different communication styles, different thinking styles, is really just, as long as you're approaching it with good faith and just, kind of going out of your way to say what you mean and choose your words carefully. Like, sometimes people with autism, for example, can be very literal. So if you say something in a like heavily metaphorical way, then you're more likely to be misunderstood. So it's as long as you just be direct, say what you mean, be acting in good faith, and be like specifically endeavoring to have comprehensive and direct communication. There's a limited amount of, there's only like a limited capacity for a negative outcome if both people are operating in good faith. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah.
And then you
I'd add to that. Yeah, I'd add to that just believe people too. So what Salem said, I simply agree with, but let's go a step back. I've shared with people over the past, in different situations and in some instances, I mean, like this community, et cetera, it's been well received, but there's been other people where I've been proactive. I've taken them out to lunch. I've sat down, I've explained who I am and how I interact, what I'm capable of, right? And vice versa. And give people what it is they need to interact, right? And also kind of understand the other side. And then it's like that conversation never happened. So I would say that it's also recognizing that this is a new conversation. These words are being thrown around a lot more than they were 10 years ago. And if you're in a workspace, and let's say maybe you're Gen Z or a millennial, right? And you're working with other generations, generationally, those were not words that were always thrown around, right? And maybe had other associations with them, right? A few decades ago, and so it's giving other individuals empathy along the way, but also making sure you set boundaries for yourself as well. And so, in the situation I just described, I simply withdraw. There's no reason to interact with somebody who's not going to take the time, whether intentionally or not, right? Sometimes it's unintentionally to understand how I work. So it's knowing it's like anything in life, neurodivergent or not, it's knowing where to put your energy and your time and how people receive you and if they give you what you need.
Yeah, that's something you touched on there is this is something that I didn't realize for the longest time. You can just tell people, what your like boundaries or communication styles are or whatever. You can just be like,
Hmm.
hey, I have autism. I am very literal. Please keep that in mind when interacting with me. And I mean, anyone who's really worth interacting with or working with will respect that. And if they
Hmm.
don't, that's useful data to have. Then maybe you
Yeah.
don't really want to work with that person.
And we live in a very distracted world. So there's neurotypical people who um, would be shocked, I think, if they looked at their screen time and how much time they spend on different devices. And so therefore it's like, are people even in the right space themselves to show up for you or ourselves, right? And how they receive these information. So I think there was another question from Jim as well here.
Cameron had
Oh,
raised her
Cameron.
hand. Let's go to her and then we'll
Yeah.
go back to Jim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to add, and I guess kind of reiterate one of your points, Salem, about like just being, I think in any situation, whether the person's neurodivergent or not, just like being explicit about what your intentions are, what you mean in certain situations, and just providing context because, we're operating, with all the context in our own head, but just providing that to other people so they know where they're at in the conversation, why you're asking questions, those sorts of things. I think it's sometimes it can be better to provide more context than, provide less. Um, but just also, I think observing and not necessarily needing to react to a person as well. Like,
Hmm.
also, I don't think it necessarily matters like if you're neurodivergent or not, but just like how people communicate is how they communicate, how people act is how they act. You know what I mean? And not everything needs a reaction or for you to adjust or like whatever. Just if I have OCD and I need to knock 3 times because you said something, just observe and move on, and doesn't always need to have a conversation about it. That's just the only thing I wanted to add on that.
I've had so many behaviors or actions or patterns called out over the years for being different or weird or this or that, and then I would take that and interpret as, okay, I need to stop this, right? But what I was doing, I actually needed. Now that's the sad reality of our, growing up. But nothing against the parents' childhood, this or that. Just growing up, '90s, 2000s as a neurodivergent child, it's what you deal with. So
Now
2010s,
I know what you
Jim.
mean. It's like, is this a thing that I need to change, or is this a
Hmm.
thing where I need to seek out environments where I don't need to change this?
Took me 30 years to figure it out. And now I know, which is great, right? And you just have to, you either do it through therapy, self-reflection, et cetera, but you have to figure out what it is that you need versus what the world's telling you you need. And it is a journey. Every People are shaking their heads because it's like, yeah, oh yeah, you first you wake up to it, then you go through it, then you figure it out, and you come out of it on the other side. So,
Let's go back over to Jim. Had another question.
mhm.
Um, he says that he's heard Will mention neurodivergent superpowers in the past, possibly somewhat in jest. But there are many truths in this observation. What are various types of neurodivergent attributes, which can
Mhm.
be superpowers? I think it was what he meant.
Yeah, I'll lightly touch on this because I talked about it a little bit earlier, and then Salem and even maybe Cameron or if somebody else wants to contribute. But pattern recognition I talked about. Um, I think what I should do, and maybe I should do it before a webinar like this, but as I think about it, I really need the words to describe this. And that's something I'm going to have to work on because when I say it's everywhere, it's everywhere. It's not something that can be turned off. It's like this constant flow of data that's coming through my brain since day one and just gets stored up there. What's cool is it's constantly coming in. It's coming in from all parts and it stays up there. I do not have photographic memory. I don't have that type of memory, but the concepts, the themes, whatever I extracted, whatever I learned from something, it can stay up there. And so it builds like a database that never really goes away. And it allows me to look at a lot of different sets. I also tag things in my head. I've realized that in the last few months. I don't tag it in a way where I can tell you what tags there are, but it has to be tagged if it's getting connected. And so I'm able to associate, here's an entity or an individual, and here's the 20 different things that we may collaborate or the 20 different projects, right? And it's all associated with that one person. So that's helpful. And then outside of pattern recognition, Honestly, this side is not talked about a whole lot. But at least autism, I can't speak, I can only speak for myself, but we have extremely resilient minds and bodies, like seriously resilient minds and bodies. And we can endure um we can endure pain, we can endure fatigue, unlike other people. I've noticed throughout my life, and it's beneficial in life, but it's very beneficial in business, because I think that people like to talk about startups as, oh, we ran out of cash, or oh, we did this, or oh, it didn't work because of this. And most of the time, what happens is you have a founder who can't keep up. And once they can't keep up, they start getting their clarity starts to go from fatigue, and they start to get chaotic, and they start to roll into that snowball type of thing. At the end of the day, they didn't have a good control of their mind or body, right? At the end of the day. And so it can be an advantage. But yeah, that's what I've had.
Cool. I think we probably need to move on to wrap up the remainder of the questions we have.
Cool. And we did start
We've gone a
five
little bit over
minutes
there, but it was good
late
conversation.
too.
What's up?
We started 5 minutes late too. So if we need to go over just a
Yeah,
tad, happy to
we'll
stay.
be fine. So next question in the interview:
Mhm.
what were some of the structural decisions you made about building your business, which were because of your neurodivergence, not despite it?
Mhm. I think the venture studio model was one of the first one that I made because of it. And it's simply at the end of the day, if you get really simple, I do have a lot of ideas, not too many where it's like it's spreading me thin. I've learned that lesson, and I think we'll get to that in a moment about early mistakes. But the model allowed me to take on multiple initiatives kind of at the same time. And I think the neurodivergency and the skill sets I've learned through my professional development allows me to manage the system. So over the years, I've gained the knowledge to see the system as a value add, okay, the knowledge to build it, and the knowledge to manage it. And those are three different skill sets. And I think neurodivergency has contributed greatly to that.
Cool. I don't really have anything to add. I totally agree.
Cool. We can make it a lightning round too if you want, because I know we got a few more to
Yeah.
go through.
Question two: systems, tools, or rhythms in your business which were non-negotiable from day one, where you're like, if I'm going to do this business, I need to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if all of these started day one, but all of these were in my head day one, and we work towards these, or we are working towards these. So daily structure is important for me, like daily structure in terms of check-ins with the team, check-in with the leadership team, them checking in with their teams, but just that very, very mundane, consistent, boring, repeatable check-in, because check-ins are just information, right? Your information's flowing everywhere, and check-in just means we're all going to put ourselves in the middle of this river and make sure we're all seeing the same thing. Cool, we're going to come back out, right? So that's important for me. Centralized tracking, right? Whether that's a database or a CRM, we're actively growing and building ours, but it's still important to have that. Is it perfect? No, but it's the intention, right? We have it, and we're actively continuing to build it for what the community needs. I'm big on communication loops, because I hate open loops. I you know just I hate open loops, right? And so it's also making sure that the volume of things that we have to do isn't just a random to-do list. We can all look at it and go, why is it growing, right? Why is it larger this week? What systems do we not have to kind of help close loops? And so that protects my time, protects my team's time, and it's something that a lot of organizations don't pay attention to from top to bottom. They kind of just send everybody else on their own. I support my team through with their meetings and understanding how they spend their time. I support them with their emails, making sure they're not getting bogged down, and that doesn't happen a whole lot of other organizations. And lastly, time blocking and environment design. So from the neurodivergent standpoint, my environment is extremely minimalist, because I'm only focused on this right now, right? And so it allows me to go inward. And if I don't have a lot of external clutter, then I can focus better. And if I have external clutter, my performance will diminish for sure. So my space involves more boxes of incense than I can count, because I can't run out of those to keep myself calm. More kombucha and you know, that I can count. Comfortable couches, lo-fi, soft lighting, all of that remains. I protect it relentlessly to keep my environment. So
I love kombucha.
yeah.
I'll add a couple of things.
Hmm.
Number one, having different communication channels for different things. So like
Mm.
for my team, so we have like our Slack, Discord, like kind of
Mhm.
main work communication channel. We decided at one point to, like, if we have like an actionable task, like if I'm assigning a task to somebody or somebody has an action item for me, we're not communicating that in chat. We
Mhm.
are like
Yes.
communicating that in a
Yes.
separate task managing queue, so you don't have to like scroll back and be like, oh, what was that thing? Like, have an organized system for that. Don't have like, yeah, have everything in its right place.
Absolutely.
Other thing also, as a, not just as a like managing my own neurodivergence for my own workflow, as a leader managing other neurodivergent people, I have found that establishing figuring out, like talking to somebody on their level, like to like, oh, person X has autism, and the best strategy is to communicate with them in this way. But if I'm talking to this other person, I'm going to talk to them in this way because I know they're more receptive to it if I communicate in a different style. So like talking to people in the way that suits them, not the way that suits you.
Agreed.
Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide here. What were some early mistakes that you made in your business which taught you about the way that your brain works? I have a bunch of these.
Oh yeah, we could talk for hours on this one. Doing too much alone, right? Doing too much solo. What's ironic now is I delegate everything and I support my team and I know how to move now, but before it was always like solo or not knowing how to delegate or not keeping the team along with you, right? And they understand the vision where you're going, and so trying to do that, overcommitting, but not for the reasons that people would think. I think neurodivergency, some of our habits can mirror maybe immature habits of maybe neurotypical people, and I don't. That might be the wrong term, but if you I see opportunity if you are constantly chasing opportunity. Some people will view an entrepreneur, they have too much going on, they don't know where to go, et cetera, right? I can actually see the opportunity. I'm able to see 20 things that would actually work, right? And if you went through all of them and vetted them, you could do them, but you have to sort through them, right? And so back in the day, I was like, oh, well, I see it. I see how I could do it and I'm close to doing it. So let's attempt it, right? But if you stack on 20 of those, that's not possible. So not taking on too much, knowing you can't do everything yourself, and then knowing what you're not good at. I'm really I have a high self-awareness around my strengths and my weaknesses, and I think that leaders should to move forward so they can rely on others. But what about you, Salem?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could talk about it for hours. I think for me, finding the right balance. You were talking about like spending a lot of time solo. I think finding the
Mhm.
right balance between something that you need to like sit and work on and meditate on versus something that you need to bring to another person to kind of externally validate.
Mhm.
Particularly when it comes to like ideation, like if you're like
Mhm.
coming up with like a new idea for a new venture you want to do, it's really easy to convince yourself something is a really good idea or a really bad idea when it's like all just up in your head. You don't want to bring it to somebody else too early before it's like fully cooked. But I've
Yes.
been trying to get more in the habit of like, when I have like the framework of an idea done in my head, the first thing I want to do is bring it to like somebody else that I respect to get external validation,
Mhm.
just to determine if it's like even worth continuing to think about, because something
Yeah,
that's entirely in your head has like really no basis in reality.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's move on here. This is the last question, I believe. Can you speak to why the venture studio slash startup slash entrepreneurship space might be especially well suited to neurodiverse individuals?
Yeah, so for myself in particular, and then maybe others can take from this, but it gives me a unique environment that I've designed. So I think any neurodiverse individual likes the idea of designing their own environment, right? And so we've designed a company that companies come out of, right? And so that's pretty layered, and there's a lot of opportunity there to make it your own. The type of work that we do is naturally creative. It's naturally designed to solve problems, right? Two things that I think neurodivergent individuals thrive in. And then it allows for more collaboration, either within the portfolio of activity or externally. And I think that neurodivergent individuals are they're the type of individuals who will collaborate, right? We like to be supported and we like to support others. And so therefore collaborating, if it makes sense, is a natural path for us. But I think those are a few ways that neurodiverse individuals could benefit from this type of model.
Yeah, totally agree. I find it's been my experience that because I meet tons of small business
Mhm.
owners, that there's a ton of small business owners, or you could call them entrepreneurs, who are neurodiverse and maybe don't even know it. Like I think there's
Mhm.
like a natural pathway when if you do maybe you have like a little sprinkling of ADHD, a little sprinkling of autism, maybe you're not diagnosed. That just kind of naturally pushes people away from the like very like cookie cutter corporate
Mhm.
culture thing where they really want you to like fit in the square hole.
Mhm.
I think it's a natural pathway to like people to start their own business because you're like, my brain works different than this. I want to do it my way, and that's like the kind of impetus that makes you start your own business. So it just seems like a
Absolutely.
natural thing to me. Also, we
It's
see things differently, So you come up with ideas other people won't, and that's the whole concept of a startup is to come up with a new idea.
Yeah, and this is the last point on my end, but it's the space to regulate yourself as well, right? If you have the luxury or you're fortunate to have some relative control over your day, then you're able to regulate yourself better with the world, right? And I think there's the most valuable thing that comes from this is that.
So lastly, we had just have another audience break here, and we started a little late, so we probably just have like 3 minutes to go on this because our last audience break went on a little long. But so this is just like a lightning round question and response. If you have a question for me or Will or whoever, or if you want to briefly answer this prompt as an audience member, what systems or accommodations have been game changers for you? And what's still a struggle? What would you like to find a system or an accommodation to help you with? So if anyone wants to chime in on either of those, I will say usually I mean, this is kind of a no brainer, but having a productivity suite of some kind, like we use Notion, just having somewhere to put that stuff, because I used to have like 5 different spreadsheets and notepads and stuff written down on paper or in my email or
Mhm.
whatever, just having some central place to put everything where you're like, this is where my workflow lives. It's here.
Mhm.
Even if it doesn't even have to be the perfect system, just somewhere, just pick one.
Yeah. I always say, first, where are you storing information? Look at that first. Notepads, your phone notebook, your laptop notebook, sticky notes on your desk, sticky notes in the office at work, your email, Slack. It's insane. It's insanity, right? It's absolutely insane. So start with just trimming a few of those, right? Where information lands and can help you get more organized. And then from there, continue. But yeah, Salem, you make a very valid point. I
Yeah,
think that
also, I mean,
interacting.
one that's customizable too.
Mhm.
That's one of the things I really like. I mean, Notion's not perfect, but that's one of the things I like about it is you can just really customize the heck out of it.
Yeah,
I
you have
think
to
Julie has
customize too. Yeah, you have to customize because usually the systems that the world put out don't always fit us. We have a question?
yeah.
Yes.
Actually, it was a comment on
Mhm.
systems and accommodations. Um, I just like the conversation and also just realized that through the schooling that most of us went through, sitting at desks 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day, and always learning to kind of fall in line in the societal ways. Uh,
Mhm.
just even asking the question can be a little bit revolutionary or freeing. Like,
Mhm.
what kinds of ways can we listen to ourselves, whether we're neurodivergent or not, but just respond and do things that help us and take out some of the struggle. So
Yeah,
just asking the question is a really cool thing.
very good point. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Um, we got one more comment in the chat here, and I think that'll probably wrap it up.
Okay.
Jim says, for systems and accommodations, he says, I function more intuitively with visual information, but have learned/incorporated textual information through my professional work. Software and apps can help. Connecting with people through their personal learning approaches is key in mind. Yeah, I honestly super empathize with that. I'm an extremely visual person.
Hmm.
I was having a meeting recently where we had like a big long like text project plan, and I went off on my own and made it into like a visual like flow chart thing because I'm like I need this to be visual.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think another comment as well there.
Oh yeah, Marin says game changers for me have been Notion and Discord. The organization of everything has been really great.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We got on Slack as a team a couple months ago. One of our team members recommended it, and it was a game changer for us as well.
Yeah, I will say, um, don't get analysis paralysis about which system to use. None of them are
Mm-mm.
perfect. Nothing's
No.
ever going to be perfect, especially with like SaaS products or whatever.
Mhm.
Just having one is better than having the perfect one.
Yeah.
Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Um, we we're like technically at the end of time here. What do you want to go with this, or just kind of wrap it up?
I think maybe we'll just put it out there and give people 15 seconds to respond, right? Is there one thing that anyone's taken away or trying this week? This gives people a
Yeah, if
moment to
anyone
respond.
just very briefly, if you have an answer
Yep.
to this question, what's one thing you're going to take away from this session, or that you're going to try this week in
Mhm.
terms of neurodivergence, accommodation, productivity, etc.? If you want to briefly put it in the chat, or if anyone has a quick voice comment, we're going to move
And
on
I'll
fairly
and
quickly.
I'll add too. A few of you have just provided good feedback and interacted with the subject matter because this is a lot to process, right? And so I'm sure that there are some takeaways. But if you simply enjoyed it and it gives you things to think about later, that's important too.
Julie says that all brains and ways of working are all important. Yeah, I totally agree. It's important to like self acknowledge and be like, the way my brain works is valid. The fact
Mhm.
that I think differently does not mean that there's something wrong with me. It's just different.
Absolutely.
Um, also, I'll put on here something that's been really helpful for me. This is not necessarily a neurodivergent specific thing, but I've been meaning for a while to start journaling, and I started doing that the last few days. And wow, that has just been a huge boost to like mental focus of just like let's just dump all the thoughts and thought fragments out into the journal, and then pick back up the pieces that are important that we want to focus on. That has just been such a huge benefit to me. And Cameron says imposter syndrome doesn't go away, but it does get better. Also, we are real life superheroes. Yeah, totally agree. And James says journaling is powerful and underutilized. Totally agree. So I'm going
Absolutely.
to go ahead and move on here just so we can get the wrap up.
Mhm.
So thanks everyone for coming to our first session. I feel like it was a pretty good success. It was a great conversation. Um, Real quick, Marin says takeaway is everyone is valid in their own experience. Totally. So thanks everyone for coming. This is going to be the first session of a long running series. So make sure to follow along with us to hear about the next upcoming events. We're going to have like more interesting guests and interviews and strategies and whatnot. If you scan this QR code here, we have a registration for our mailing list. You can also follow me and Will on LinkedIn. There's the URLs for our respective websites. And yeah, so that's pretty much all. I'll leave that up for a second in case anybody wants to scan or take a screenshot or what have you.
And thank you for having me, Salem, and everyone
Yeah,
here
it was a
today.
great conversation. Thank you.